I got to say, this is probably one of the most valuable episodes that we've done. This is really, really, really key, important content because Customs and Border Protection provides all of you with a huge enforcement arm to protect your trademarks and your copyrighted material. And I want to show you guys how you guys can go about learning more information about using Customs and Border Protection, and also so that you guys can see how you actually can go about registering your copyrights or trademarks with the Customs and Border Protection. So trademarks are relatively inexpensive. It only costs $190, but the protection that you get is pretty incredible. So if you think about it, a lot of the goods that come into the U.S., they come from overseas. And so Customs and Border Protection has various ports throughout the coasts, both coasts. And so registering your trademark with Customs and Border Protection will allow Customs and Border Protection to actually enforce your trademark rights for you. And the way they do that in general at a really high level is as goods come in, they inspect the goods and they check for marks that might be on those goods that infringe possible marks owned by other parties that aren't owned by you. So if you own a mark, you register it with Customs and Border Protection, and then they identify someone importing a mark that doesn't have your authorization or to import that particular good with your mark, then they'll seize the goods. So it's an enforcement arm. It allows the Customs and Border Protection to actually seize goods that violate potential trademarks and copyrights of third parties. Now, in those proceedings, again, the seizure proceedings are quite serious in that they actually will destroy the goods unless they can show that they actually have a license or authorization from the trademark, from the intellectual property right holder to be importing those goods. So, and as more and more production and manufacturing goes overseas, I think this right and this protection that CBP gives you is just going to be more invaluable. So really consider doing that. So let's get into it. I want to show you guys just some techniques for how you guys can go about leveraging CBP for protecting your intellectual property and for enforcing your intellectual property rights. So just do a really simple Google search. So I'm gonna Google CBP. That stands for Customs and Border Protection. And then I'm gonna type in IPR. That stands for Intellectual Property Rights. So CBP IPR. So once I type that, I'm gonna get a few hits. There's some that I think are really on point. The one that I think is a really key place to start is right here. It's called it's a PDF, so it's the only PDF hit, but it's a really useful guide, and it has a lot of really valuable information that I highly encourage all of you to take a look at, especially if you own trademarks and you want to leverage CBP to protect your rights. So they actually have a really detailed guide, and they tell you exactly what you need to do. I'm going to show you two other things in this video, but I want to show you this guide because I think it's really useful. So they give you the introduction, they explain to you there's various borders, and then they explain to you that they actually can seize imported merchandise that infringes intellectual property rights of other parties. So really useful guide. Highly encourage you guys to take a look at this. Now, they also explain that there's a way of recording. So this is what I'm going to show you guys, how you guys go to that application so that you can actually record your rights with Customs and Border Protection. That's the $190 application that I was referring to earlier. So let's talk about it. Let's get into it. I'm going to go back. Now, a few useful links. So the PDF is a really useful link. But if you move up here, you can actually find the database. So this is right here. The first hit is going to be their actual database. So this is the database of intellectual property rights owners. And this is the database that they use when they're trying to assess whether or not potential marks might be infringing. So this is the IPRS intellectual property rights search. So if you type in a company, so for example, we can pick a large manufacturer of electronics. Let's do Sony, for example. So if you type in Sony, all right, you're going to see all these owners, all these marks owned by Sony. The CyberShot, this is a famous camera. PlayStation, a lot of you know. Xperia, this is I believe this is a laptop brand. But as you can see, these are the marks that Sony has registered with Customs and Border Protection. So this is the owner name, and as you can see, this is Sony Corporation. So let's click into one just so we can learn a little bit more. So let's take a look at the So notice this is placed. This is for clothing. I clicked into the Sony. This is for clothing, and as you guys can see here, so this is Sony Interactive Entertainment, and this is covering clothing. So any clothing that has PlayStation on the labels or packaging of the clothing or tags, that might raise a red flag, unless the importer has authorization from the owner, so from Sony Interactive Entertainment, to actually import those goods. So let's look at one more. But we can also do other searches. For example, let's look at Samsung. Again, I'm picking big companies here that are going to have a lot of, right? So as you can see, we scroll down, we can see how many they have, right? So they have only 11. Interesting. I would have expected they would have had more. But as you can see, they have mobile phones. So this is protecting the Samsung name, stylized versions. I wanted to show you guys this database so you can just see what types of goods, what types of companies have registered marks with CBP. And what's also interesting is you can also look at copyrights. So let's look at Sony, and then let's see if they have any. Let's see if they have any copyrights. So here, style guides, textbooks, illustrations. So they have 2 copyrights on registered with CBP. So really interesting. You can see here. So this is related to Spider-Man. So Spider-Man style guide. So Spider-Man 2 style guide. Pretty neat. So it's not just trademarks, it's also copyrights, it's also trade names. And so pretty neat. It's a cool thing to check out. Study the database. You can see what your competitors are doing. You can get ideas. So really good idea to be registered on CBP. Highly encourage all of you to do so. Now, let me give you guys another useful tip just to show you guys what you guys can do to get started. So I already showed you the guide. The guide is definitely a really awesome go-to place. And then the other thing that you should consider doing is actually just getting a feel for the actual application. It's pretty simple. So this is the 4th hit, but you're basically looking for the e-recordation application. The application is $190. I'm zooming in here so you guys can see nice and clearly. Here you go. So recordation fee for copyrights is $190. You're going to see that the recordation fee for trademarks is also $190. Now, one thing I'll note is it's $190 per class. So remember, if you have 10 classes on one mark, that's actually going to be kind of expensive. It's going to be $1,900. But again, still worth it. It's really good idea to do this if you guys are in any sort of business where competitors might be importing goods into the US that want to rip off your mark. So this is a really good way to get CBP to do a lot of legwork for you, because if some competitor tries to rip off your brand and import goods, CBP could seize their goods and prevent those goods from ever entering the US market and be sold in US sales channels. So it's a no-brainer. It's only $190. Really, you should all consider doing this. Now, let me actually just show you the initial application page. I'm not going to do one with you guys today, but it is good just to be familiar with where the site is. So let me show you guys the application. So you click New Recordation, and once you're here, you're going to input your registration number. So here you would select trademark, for example, and then you would actually put in your registration number. I am going to just see if I can cook up something random. I just picked a random number, and you can see this is the mark that came up. And if you click Proceed, you would actually input all the information for this particular mark, including the owner name. And interestingly, also, you would put in the point of contact, because this is the party that they're going to contact when those goods come in that have that mark, okay? Now, you would continue the application, and once you fill out the rest of the form, for example, confirming the class information is right and your email address, all the contact information, then you would go ahead and click Proceed. And once you fill out the application, you'll be prompted to pay the $190, and then eventually you're going to end up on that IPR database. So using Customs and Border Protection is a really important way to protect your intellectual property, and you leverage CBP, the Customs and Border Protection, as an enforcement arm to protect your IP. So hope you guys found this episode helpful. Thanks so much for watching.